Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're digging into a really fascinating bit of cannabis history, a time way before dispensaries on every corner.
Yeah, completely different world. Our main source here is MadJag Hooter, eine wilden Zeit, eine umfassende Geschichte. It's this really detailed account of MadJag, a key player in Arizona's early cannabis scene.
A central figure, definitely. And we're looking at his story as, oh well, a guerrilla grower, someone saving genetics way ahead of the curve, and even an activist, all happening long before things were legal.
Exactly. And you really have to understand the context of the time, right? The 1970s U.S.
Right. So cannabis use was like picking up steam, but the quality, not so great. The text talks about imports from Mexico, Colombia, often arriving as these compressed bricks.
Yeah, compressed, seedy, sometimes even moldy. Not exactly appealing stuff.
No. And that poor quality, that seems to be a huge motivator for people like MadJag. They wanted something better.
Absolutely. That dissatisfaction really created the space, the need for something different, better quality, more control. That really pushed him to start growing his own.
So it wasn't just like a preference thing. Sometime in the early to mid 70s, he makes this decision, okay, I'm doing this myself. And the text details how he started searching for spots in northern Arizona, the Mogollon Rim specifically.
And what's really interesting is how he seemed to just know what the plants needed. The rim offered, water, sunlight, and crucially, isolation.
Yeah, away from prying eyes. That choice of location early on, it kind of shows a real connection to the land, doesn't it? Almost intuitive.
Totally. But he wasn't completely alone in this. He got inspiration from High Times magazine.
Oh, the classic.
Yeah. And he apparently had some support from friends who were, on the same wavelength. But this wasn't just a weekend project.
No, the text makes it clear. He really committed. Left regular jobs, spent long stretches living out in the wilderness, just focused on growing good cannabis. Quite a dedication.
A massive commitment. So, okay, these early efforts, they lead to him setting up hidden gardens, secret spots in these remote Arizona canyons.
He even called it Arizona's Emerald Triangle, didn't he? Kind of a nod to California.
Yeah, exactly. And right from the start, the focus was quality, not just churning out quantity.
And he was specific about genetics, too, wasn't he? Using Mexican landraces.
Yes, strains from Guerrero, Oaxaca, Michoacan, acquired through, let's say, unofficial routes.
Right, informal channels. But focusing on those landraces back then, that shows a pretty deep understanding, even early on. These were the originals he was working with.
Absolutely fundamental. And then around 1977, something memorable happens.
The name origin story. This is where the legend kind of starts, right?
Pretty much. He's alone overnight in one of these canyons and bam, encounter with a large cat. The source mentions maybe a puma, maybe a jaguar.
Wow.
And that encounter, that intense moment, that's where the name MadJag comes from. And the place itself gets known as MadJag Canyon.
Imagine that kind of experience alone in the wild. It must have really stuck with him. Definitely shaped his identity in this whole venture.
You think so? It adds a layer of, I don't know, almost mythos to it.
Totally. But then things really shift gears around 1979. A big turning point.
Huge. This is when he managed to get his hands on skunk #1 seeds.
Yeah.
We're talking 3,000 seeds.
From the California guys, right? Rob Clark and Sam Skunkman.
The legends themselves, yeah. And acquiring those seeds was, well, it was a game changer.
Okay, so for anyone listening who isn't deep into cannabis history, why was skunk #1 such a big deal back then?
Well, skunk #1 was kind of revolutionary. It combined the best bits from different land races. Think faster flowering, bigger yields, that really intense, pungent smell.
The skunk smell.
Exactly. And importantly, much higher potency than a lot of what was around. It was a real leap forward in breeding.
So MadJag gets these seeds, and he doesn't just like scatter them around?
No. He was meticulous. He grew them out, carefully selected the best plants, the phenotypes with the traits he wanted.
Okay, so phenotype selection, that means like picking the individual plants that showed the best characteristics. Speed, smell, potency, that sort of thing.
Precisely. Picking the winners. And then, crucially, he started crossbreeding them with the Mexican land races he already had.
Adapting them.
Exactly. He wanted plants that were potent, high quality, and tough enough for the Arizona climate. That's how MadJag Sinsemilla came about.
Sinsemilla meaning without seeds in Spanish, right? That was the mark of top shelf stuff back then.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Seedless, high-potency flower. It was exceptional for the time.
So here he is, out in the wilds, growing this amazing cannabis. But it couldn't have been easy. The risks must have been huge.
Oh, immense. The article lists them.
Hmm?
You've got law enforcement, local police, DEA,
Yeah.
and there are natural threats, storms, fires, drought, wild animals.
Plus, just the sheer difficulty of being out there so isolated, logistics must have been a nightmare.
Totally. It underscores the danger and the dedication involved. This was serious business. So he and his crew, they had to get smart.
Camouflage techniques.
Sophisticated camouflage, yeah. Hidden trails, emergency plans if things went sideways. They had to think of everything.
And keeping the plants alive, too. Improvised irrigation. Hidden camps. It sounds almost like military planning mixed with farming.
It kind of does. And what's really striking is how long he managed to stay off the radar. Years and years.
How did he manage that? The article puts it down to discretion.
Discretion, absolutely. But also this incredibly deep knowledge of the land. He wasn't just hiding on the land, he was almost part of it. That's how he avoided detection for so long. In such a kind of underground world, maintaining that secrecy, it must have required incredible discipline.
For sure. Okay, so let's jump forward quite a bit to the 2000s. The world is starting to talk about medical cannabis more openly, and MadJag's role changes.
Yeah, it's a really interesting shift. He moves from being this hidden figure to becoming more of a public advocate.
He got involved with Safer Arizona.
That's right. And one particular issue he fought against was this 25-mile rule in the medical cannabis laws.
Explain that rule a bit. It had to do with home growing.
Yeah, basically it often meant patients couldn't grow their own cannabis if they lived within 25 miles of a licensed dispensary.
Okay. So it limited patient cultivation rights based on proximity to a store.
Exactly. And MadJag, with his decades of experience and belief in the plant, saw this as a major issue.
What was his main argument against it?
Pretty straightforward, according to the text. He argued it was a fundamental right for patients to grow their own medicine, period. Location shouldn't matter.
And he felt it was protecting dispensary profits over patient needs.
That was definitely part of his concern, yeah. That the economics were trumping basic patient rights and access.
And he wasn't just saying this quietly. He was active, right?
Yeah.
Online forums.
Yeah, places like ICMag, Overgrow platforms where the cannabis community gathered online. He was contributing to discussions, sharing his perspective. It showed his commitment went beyond just his own grow. It was about broader principles.
Which leads us to the House of MadJag project. This sounds like a deliberate effort to preserve that history.
It really is. He set up a website, madjag.com, basically a digital archive of his whole story.
What kind of stuff is in there?
You've got the MadJag Chronicles, his own stories, firsthand accounts from those crazy early days, plus historical photos from the late 70s.
Wow, actual photos from that time. That's gold.
Incredible documentation.
Mm-hmm.
And it also details the old landrace genetics he worked with. Super valuable info for breeders today. And even his own writings, philosophical essays on freedom, nature, authenticity.
So it's more than just growing logs. It's the whole story, the context, the philosophy behind it.
Exactly. It's an amazing resource. Our real look into a time of huge risk, but also huge passion. It wasn't just about making money for guys like him back then.
So if we zoom out, what's the lasting legacy here? MadJag's impact.
Well, several things. First, he got to prove you could grow top-tier cannabis in Arizona. It wasn't just a California thing.
Challenge that assumption.
Right. Second, bringing skunk #1 to the Southwest that had a massive influence on the genetics in that whole region. You probably still see echoes of that today in local strains.
Absolutely. And the article mentions him being a mentor figure, too.
Yeah, sharing his knowledge online, in person,
Yeah.
helping other growers out. And through those chronicles, he's basically acting as a cultural historian, making sure those early stories aren't lost.
Preserving the heritage. It seems like that generation saw cannabis cultivation as more than just farming. It was tied up with, like, independence, a certain lifestyle.
Definitely a counterculture identity. And speaking of stories, the article highlights a couple of specific anecdotes.
Right. The Night of the Jaguar, we talked
Right.
about that one. The encounter that gave him his name, such a vivid image, alone in the canyon facing down a predator.
It really captures the wildness, the solitude, the resilience needed for what he was doing. It's a powerful symbol,
And the other one, the Newsweek mention, that's wild.
isn't it? Back in 1982, Newsweek does a cover story on the U.S. cannabis boom, and they apparently make an indirect reference to his stuff, his quality, without actually naming him.
Underground recognition on a national scale.
Kind of. It just shows the reputation his cannabis had built. Even back then, when everything was so hidden, people in the know, they knew who Newsweek was hinting at.
Amazing. And this isn't all just history, right? The article says he's still active.
Yeah, apparently so. Working on reviving old genetics, like Mexican sativas, breeding new landrace hybrids, even consulting for newer growers and seed banks.
So even with legalization changing everything, he's still involved, still focused on those foundational genetics and the culture.
Seems like it. He's still committed to preserving that authentic cannabis culture, making sure the history and the genetics don't get swallowed up by the commercial industry. He's kind of a bridge between that old wild time and now.
Okay, so wrapping this up, what are the key takeaways from MadJag's story?
I mean, for me, it really shows the impact one dedicated person can have. He went from this outlaw guerrilla grower to, well, a really significant figure in cannabis history, especially in genetic preservation, even if maybe he's not super famous outside certain circles.
And it highlights that for a whole group of people back then, cannabis was way more than just a product. It was about, I don't know, identity, courage, passion for the plant itself.
Absolutely. And his story is a great reminder that, important stuff, real resistance or innovation, it doesn't always happen under the bright lights.
Hmm.
Sometimes it's quiet, persistent work driven by conviction.
Yeah, that's a great point. So maybe a final thought for you listening. How many other sort of unsung heroes like MadJag are out there in all kinds of fields, quietly preserving knowledge, pushing boundaries, shaping things in ways we don't even realize? What stories are we missing? Definitely something to think about.